Theodore. He's a tugboat and a friendly tugboat too. A friendly tugboat too. Oh, Theodore likes to do the things that friendly tugboats do. Pushing and a pulling in the great big harbor, in the great big world is so much fun. So many brand new things to discover. Waking with the sun, gotta get the job done. Oh, Theodore and Emily, Bodak, Hank and George, and the harbor master too.
Theodore was up bright and early to watch the sun rise up over the big harbor. Now, usually it felt wonderful to watch the sun come up, but not today. You see, Theodore always watched the sunrise with his good friend Emily. But Emily was gone, all the way across the ocean on a big job. "I miss Emily," Theodore said softly. Just then, Theodore saw two big ships far out on the ocean. One ship turned toward the open ocean, and the other towards the big harbor. "Maybe one of those ships is coming to visit us," Theodore said to himself. "Maybe I'll be chosen to help bring him in. Maybe we'll even be friends."
Is it just me, or do the sunrises look even more beautiful than the last season? Like, that shot alone is gorgeous. But as you heard, Emily is away out on the ocean. What particular job is she doing out there? It was never mentioned at all. And there's a new ship coming to visit the harbor. And potentially that means a new friend for Theodore. But the news of the big ship wasn't even mentioned at the meeting, and that's when the tugs learned of something rather special about this new visitor.
"He's a new kind of ship, Theodore. He doesn't need tugboats."
"He doesn't need tugs," repeated Hank. "Everyone needs tugs," said Theodore. "Not this ship," said the dispatcher. "He has a special engine, and he can steer right to his dock all by himself." Well, when Theodore heard this, he was even more interested in the big ship. "I want to meet him," he whispered to Hank.
Huh. Never heard of a ship that could dock itself. As always, docking is usually done under tug power. But with his special engine, he can dock himself. That's pretty cool. So the big ship, who was named Cumberland, arrives in the harbor but ends up stopping. Theodore heads over to say hello, but things don't go as he had hoped they would.
"I'm Theodore Tugboat. I'm a tugboat." Theodore did feel a little funny saying he was a tugboat twice.
"I'm Cumberland,"
said the giant ship. It didn't look like he wanted to talk to Theodore. "I was just wondering," said Theodore. I was thinking. Now, maybe you need help getting to your dock?"
"I don't need tugboats,"
replied Cumberland. And then he began to turn away from Theodore towards the ocean. Well, it seemed like all the air in Theodore's bumpers was leaking out. He felt smaller and smaller and smaller. He wanted to make a big new friend, but Cumberland wasn't being very friendly at all.
Well, that was rude. Theodore was only trying to be helpful and got completely shunned away. If Cumberland really didn't need any help, he could have said that nicer. Then again, he doesn't even look like he has any cargo on his deck. He's literally just in the way. And that was a problem because work in the harbor was taking much longer. And no matter how much Theodore tried to be friendly, it seemed that the big ship not only didn't need tugs, but he also seemed to not like them. With all this in mind, Theodore then headed for home, but then the dispatcher assigned him to do a very unexpected late-night job.
"Theodore, that big ship is still blocking the harbor."
"Oh, we can't move him, sir," said Theodore. "He doesn't need tugs."
"It soon will be dark," continued the dispatcher in his most serious voice. "Other ships might bump into him. I am sending you, Theodore, to spend the night beside him."
"Spend the night?" repeated Theodore, surprised.
"Yes," said the dispatcher. "I want you to warn other ships away. Proceed immediately."
Well, Theodore couldn't believe it. He thought Cumberland didn't like tugs, and now he had to spend the whole night beside him.
Well, damn. Now Theodore doesn't really have much of a choice here, does he? Spending the whole night beside a ship who seems to not like tugs is kind of unsettling to Theodore. Hey, I don't blame him. I'd be the exact same way. Then again, we wouldn't want other ships to bump into him. So much to Cumberland's dismay, he allows Theodore to watch beside him for any other oncoming ships. This was gonna be a very long night.
Theodore floated beside Cumberland, and as it began to grow dark, he shined his light to warn other ships away. Theodore spotted a dark shape moving silently through the water. "Watch out for the ship," he called.
Oh, thank you, Theodore.
A familiar voice replied. It was Northumberland's submarine, heading out for his nightly underwater adventure.
It's a good thing you're watching out for your friend there,
said Northumberland. "Oh, Cumberland's not really my friend," said Theodore quietly. "He's much bigger than me."
Who cares if Cumberland is bigger than you are? Just 'cause there's a size difference doesn't mean you can't be friends. You, of all tugs, should understand that, and you should also know how dangerous it would have been if other ships couldn't see Cumberland in the dark. So be lucky you were there when Northumberland passed, at least. Anyway, Theodore watched all that night and was very sleepy by the next morning. Then just as suddenly, something else surprised Theodore.
I'm going home,
said Cumberland. "Well, why?" asked Theodore.
That's where Conrad Explorer is, replied Cumberland.
"Who's Conrad Explorer?" said Theodore.
Oh, Conrad Explorer is my special friend, answered Cumberland.
"Was that big ship I saw you with?" asked Theodore.
"Yes," said Cumberland. "And now he's all the way across the ocean."
"Well, that's where Emily is," said Theodore.
"Who's Emily?"
asked Cumberland. "Emily is my special friend," replied Theodore. "I really miss her." Cumberland slowed down a little, and Theodore came up beside him. "Do you miss Conrad like I miss Emily?" he said.
"Well," began Cumberland, "sort of, I guess."
Ah, so that's why Cumberland was acting so strange. There's really nothing wrong with missing your friend, especially since this Conrad Explorer is somewhere out on the ocean, same as Emily, and Cumberland and Theodore are far back in the harbor. This kind of behavior is perfectly normal. No need to be embarrassed as long as you have a trustworthy friend to open up to. And that's exactly what Cumberland saw in Theodore. So now that things were cleared up, Theodore wanted to do something special to try and cheer Cumberland up.
"When my friend Emily is here," called Theodore, "we always watch the sunrise together."
"You do?"
said Cumberland. "Yes," said Theodore. "And now I'd like you to watch it with me." Theodore pushed and turned Cumberland until they were both facing the rising sun. Theodore and Cumberland just floated there, staring at the sun coming up over the big harbor for a long, long time.
"What a wonderful sunrise," Cumberland said at last. "You know," said Cumberland, "I guess I did need a tugboat after all."
"Oh, everyone needs tugboats," smiled Theodore.
And that concludes Theodore's Big Friend. What I like about this story in particular is how it shows us that you don't have to be afraid to open up how you feel about certain things. In this case, missing a friend. We all have had friends that have either been away on a job, on a long vacation, etc., and this kind of behavior, again, is perfectly normal. So I feel like a lot of people will really sympathize with Theodore here. I can even see people relating to Cumberland a little bit, who, I may add, viewers are first introduced to. I will say though, for the first half, Cumberland is very unlikable. He basically comes off as someone who doesn't need any kind of help and seems too much of a closed book. But after opening up to Theodore about how he feels, he realizes that he didn't need to close off Tugs, pretending he really didn't need him. Music in this episode was a tad different. There was a bit of that soft-sounding music for some scenes like the sunrise or some of the more emotional ones. Cumberland's theme can slightly be heard, but the two tracks that I really liked was the scene where Theodore heads over to Cumberland, and especially the ending as Cumberland and Theodore are watching the sunrise. And for visuals, we see multiple shots in the harbor, like the Great Ocean Dock, Willie's Island, the front, and the back of the harbor set. And like I said before, those sunrise shots are far more beautiful compared to Season 2. Up next is Emily and the Missing Barge.